Thank you to anyone who's joining us now or watching this recording later. My name is Zach Trowbridge. I'm the Vice President of the Hagginwood Community Association. And we're here, we have Kathy Anuszczyk, who's our president. We're here with the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Alan Warren, our current District 2 City Council representative and the incumbent nominee for the upcoming election in November. So I'm going to turn off this share, and then Alan, if you wanted to take a minute to just kind of discuss, give us a little overview of who you are for maybe new residents who probably don't know you yet. And yeah, we can go from there.
Sure. Well, I'm Alan Warren, born and raised here in District 2 from kindergarten through high school. Graduated from Grant High School, went away to college, first in the family to graduate from college. I'm very fortunate because I'm from a family of 8, but I have 7 wonderful sisters. I'm the only boy, and I'm next to the youngest. And so a lot of support as a young person in the community, and had a chance to see the community when it was a more healthy environment, I think, for all of us, that included things like Safeways and the types of things we see, grocery stores and other things, the types of things we see in other healthier communities, when we had community hospitals and retail places and things of that nature. And so I've been around, left, went away to college, played a little professional baseball, spent a little time working on Wall Street out of college as a financial analyst and a stockbroker. Came back to this community in 90, after having traveled quite a bit. Zach may not have been born then, I'm not sure. But I came back here because really this community was not the same community. We had a huge issue with drugs and crack cocaine that had come through right after I'd left high school, and it really decimated this community. A lot of the businesses started moving, and people started moving out. And I had a chance to travel and see what communities look like, because this was all I knew as well. And I decided to come back and make a difference. So I left Wall Street, started a company, started developing affordable housing initially for migrant farm workers and low-income families, and then kind of migrated into more mainstream, have developed everything from affordable housing to million-dollar homes. And then I would take the money that I made and invest it back in this community. So I own a fair amount of property in the community. I also came back, I developed the Sacramento Urban League building, donated that property to the Urban League, and built that building for the Urban League. And have really been kind of quietly moving along, supporting young people, youth, kids going to college, really inspiring people in the community. And then one day I got hit in the head with a rock and decided to run for city council. A number of people had been pushing me to get more involved politically. And so ultimately, I decided to do it. But I think those are the people that know me know I'm not very political in terms of, I don't live politics. I'm about doing the work and going about my business as best I can. So, I am I'm here. I live in the house I grew up in Astoria. So my family's been here for around 50 years or so. And I live in that house right now. And, a number of family and friends still live here and very engaged in various aspects of the community. And so, we've had some major accomplishments since I've been in office, but, we have a lot of challenges. We had a lot of work to do, a lot of cleanup work when I got in office, some of which we might discuss today. But if not, we've worked through a good number of the issues, and we're really trying to create a foundation for which this community can be a more vibrant, thriving community. And And, you know, what you will see, if you really look at the numbers, you will start to see that taking shape. You see people, Zach, like yourself, moving into the community and other young professionals moving in. You also see property values have more than doubled since I've been in office, basically. And some of that obviously has to do with the market and the affordability, but also because some of the things you don't hear about are really making a difference, and people are identifying our community as one of the best places to come and invest for residential development. And so we're continuing that, and I think it's part of our responsibility to really educate people, at least a lot of those that are here and have been here for years, that would be subject to gentrification, which is something that a lot of people are expressing concern to me about. When second and third generation members are selling homes that they grew up in, and then they can't afford to come back in. And, you know, and all of that is an educational process. Another one of the major issues in this community, for years and years, we had very low voter turnout. You know, even though we may have been registered, people didn't vote. First time I ran, I think, was the biggest election in recent history for District 2. And so, you know, there's a lot of people, I think, paying more attention to what's going on here. Some of that has to do with, I'm sure, timing. But I'd like to believe some of it has to do with me, you know, being here and people recognizing that, you know, I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to do what I'm doing. I didn't have to invest the money in this community that I have. And so, you know, a number of people, I think, have paid attention. And as a result, I think we're starting to, you know, to bear some of the fruits. And some of that we can get into on this call. But I think, Zach, you know, for an opener, hopefully that's enough. And then I'm happy to participate. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to answer questions.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for that great background. I didn't know about some of your council member career in life. That's really interesting. Very cool.
And I only gave you just a snippet of it too, Zach. So.
I can't wait. What's your top must return to in your life place that you got to visit before you moved back to Sacramento?
Oh man, I went to a little town called Jamestown, and it was either in somewhere upstate New York or Pennsylvania. It was like just a picture perfect little town.
Nice.
And I was playing in the New York Yankee organization, and I was in the minor leagues, and I was in a place called Oneonta, New York. And Oneonta is up not too far from Niagara Falls and Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. And we played in these little towns, and just some of the cutest little towns. And first place I ever had what they call buffalo wings. I had no idea what it was. And it was these little chicken bits, that were just delicious. And because we only made like $750 a month, we'd have to catch these places on their specials. And they had specials with all the guys. We'd come in there and we'd eat just buckets of this buffalo wings.
Nice.
That was a cool place for me, and someplace, I'd hope to do like a motorhome trip or something at some point and drive through there. So I'm an outdoorsman. I like to hike and bike and do all that stuff. But
very nice.
Yeah.
I can imagine the postcard towns that you're talking about. I've never gotten to spend any time in the Northeast yet, unfortunately. But yeah, I can imagine the postcards with the adorable little towns and stuff. I can't wait to see them someday.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the introduction. As we kind of talked about, we have a lot of questions from residents, some from us, and yeah, I'm just excited to kind of, hopefully inform some voters in like Hagginwood and surrounding areas that are probably new to the community. As you mentioned, like there's people moving into the community. So yeah, just hoping to kind of shed some light on some things and yeah, go from there.
Yeah.
So the first question, which you kind of already alluded to, so I'm really excited to hear your answer to, is that we hear a lot, kind of on the political front, just like you do. I'm sure we hear a lot of the negative, right? We don't hear as much of the positive as we hear a lot of people who are experiencing frustration. And I think that a lot of people feel, not everyone obviously, but a lot of people probably feel there's a general sense in communities in District 2 that it's not doing as well as a whole as a lot of other, districts are doing, and that maybe even is a slight decline in living standards in certain areas of District 2. Obviously not all of them. What specific programs, projects, or community movements can you point to that show District 2 has in fact become a better place to live for its residents during your 2 terms as city council president?
Well, first of all, I just point to real estate values. When people talk about the communities not doing as well, they can look to if they own property, they're doing extremely well, and on a percentage basis, better than just about any place in the city. You can look at percentage of property value increases and compare it with any place in the city. This is light rail. Let light rail go by.
Does that include if you're living close to light rail, Mr. Warren?
My parents bought this house for $20,000.
Wow.
Now worth a lot more than that. So
Yeah.
yes. So, but here's the other thing. We didn't have. So when I ran for public office, there was a couple of things I touched on that were my campaign slogans. One was to create more places for us to, for instance, buy groceries. We were designated as a food desert, and the things, Zach, that you mentioned, that stuff didn't just start. I mean, this place, if we go back 20 years ago, you can go back further actually and look at where this community was. And so this community is clearly one of the up and coming communities in the entire region. But we don't have things that some of the other communities have, and we haven't had them for a long time. A lot of people don't know that the first Rayleigh's grocery store was open in North Sacramento.
Wow.
And so, and now, we've struggled with getting fresh fruits and vegetables, and particularly if you compare, and I'm not going to name any names, but if you compare the grocery stores in our district, and light rail again. So if you compare grocery stores in our district, compare quality and pricing, and people will see that we have a problem. Most people in our community, unless they don't have transportation or, maybe if they are looking for particular ethnic items, they don't shop in District 2 for groceries until we open Grocery Outlet. Grocery Outlet now is open, and we had to really fight. We fought for, and since I've been in office, we were the impetus for 3 grocery stores opening since I've been in office. One was a ground up build, which was Grocery Outlet. Another one was a grocery store that really caters to the Hmong community and Southeast Asian community called Super X, which is
That's a
really
great
nice.
one.
It's a really nice. A lot of people don't even know about it. And then the other one was Viva on Marysville. We were in the process of putting somebody else there as a grocer, and because Sean was in the area, we encouraged him to do it, and then supported him to open it. And I will say, it's better than nothing, but I think we have to continue to do better. We need, for instance, currently I'm working on another grocery store that is very similar to Trader Joe's. Okay, and I'm going to reveal it tonight. The location would be at the old Arcade Market site. Okay.
Okay, you piqued my interest now.
So yeah, but see, these things take time, But some people see them as competition. They don't see it as supporting the community. They see it as competition to what they do. And really what we got to do is have people elevate. Our expectations should be higher from people who we do business with, right? And as a politician, we can work to try to bring those businesses in, but not everybody's going to be happy about it, And so the reality is we need more fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, meats, and the types of things that make us a healthy community. And we need them reasonably priced, you know? And so, and that's what I've been doing. And so had a meeting last week over at the old arcade market site. And, you know, and I have a grocer who is very interested, and we're going through the process right now to, you know, try to implement a new and improved Trader Joe's for District 2. And so,
Great.
you know, I mean, but that's something, you know, it'll probably take us 6 to 8 months to do it, you know. And then they got to determine whether they want to keep the building that they have, do they want a new building, and if they do, you know, there are things that have to happen. And so, but we're working on that, you know. And so, I mean, those are the kinds of things people probably don't know, that we're building a new medical facility in District 2, ground up. It's almost open now. It's on El Camino Boulevard.
I was going to ask you what that was. I was wondering if that
Well,
was
see,
medical.
you know, people, I mean, one of the things I'm not good at is bragging or touting what we've been doing, because that's really not reflective of who I am and why I'm doing this. You know, I'm not in politics because I like politics. I really don't like politics, but I like to get things done. And sometimes you have to get in the fight in order to implement the changes that are necessary. And so I'm just a vehicle for change, right? And so, you know, I mean, so things like groceries and medical facilities are things that we need as foundational pieces. You know, these are the kind of the meat and potatoes of a healthy community. And so that's a couple of examples. In addition to, compare your real estate values on a percentage basis when I took office, and look anywhere in the city and compare the percentages of increases in your real estate values.
Yeah, I appreciate that point of view. I'm going to jump on to the next one. We're about 30 minutes in here. I know we said about 7:30, and I want to be respectful of your time, but
no, not 7:37.
And thank you for dropping that nice little nugget to get our residents super excited and want to listen to this.
About what?
Because that's an amazing announcement.
Well, I mean, it's stuff. You know what I mean? It's stuff. You know, it's stuff we need. I need it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I live here too, man. I need this stuff, you know?
Yeah. On you living here too, I want to ask you this question, and I think that it's probably—
Please do. Please ask the question. Yes,
it's one of the harder ones. I'm not going to lie, but you know, I feel the frustration here and you should, I'm sure you do too, right? Because you live in this area. So from a citizen who has lived in the really close to you, Ripley and South, for, he says, about more than 20 years. As you're aware, as a resident of that specific area, we experience an extremely frequent, very often amount of illegal dumping.
Illegal dumping is atrocious.
Explosions, fires, loose animals,
right.
All of that, all related to, you know, that undeveloped property on Ripley, and then obviously the Marysville corridor. And, you know, that's a very big problem and a very big question that, you know, we're not going to be able to solve on our own, right? But
well, we could solve it if people work together. We should buy it, right?
This resident
create a community fund and buy it.
I mean,
I tried to buy the Ripley property is immediately behind my house. So I tried to buy that property. A bank foreclosed or a lender foreclosed from whoever was developing it before. And, you know, they wanted too much, basically, for what I thought, you know, it was worth.
Yeah.
And so, but it has been a source of constant issues. We've put cameras back there, you know, and typically what happens are people come from outside of the area and they clean up. You know, we have a number of apartments down Astoria and in and around the area on Del Paso and other places. And so rather than them taking, if people move out and leave stuff, rather than them taking that stuff to the dump, they look for the easiest place to dump it.
Yeah.
And because there are very few eyes back there on Ripley. So here's what we're doing. We're in the process.
So this resident's question is specifically with that being such a big and constant problem for so long, right immediately around your neighborhood and like in your immediate neighborhood and affecting you directly, right? And the parkland and all of that. His concern is with that much going on right there, that shakes his faith in you being able to lead the district, right? Because
he's entitled to his
so
opinion.
I want your honest response to that, and why he should have faith in you.
Well, here's what I think. You take it all in totality. It's not a single issue. You need to look at the responsibilities that a person is tasked with, and then you can, you judge them based on what they've done. And if it's one or two issues and they want to make it, it's fine. It's politics, man. I have my favorite, in politics as well. And so, but it's based on something. And so this is really about, understanding that this is a marathon. People have been doing this stuff for 20, 30 years. It doesn't just stop, in 5 or 6 or 7 years. But whoever asked the question should understand that I helped implement the illegal dumping policy in the city of Sacramento and enhance the reward program for reporting it. People probably don't know, and this person in particular, if you see people illegally dumping, you can report it and get up to $1,000. And the people who get caught can not only be fined, but they can be prosecuted. And I have people in the district, and believe it or not, Ripley is a problem, but there are other places in the district that are much worse. And in fact, in the city that are much worse. But I know people who have done just that, who have gotten the rewards and they've reported. And there are people who drive around now looking for people that they can report, and so, but what I am in the process of doing is getting 3 cameras that will be controlled by problem areas. So for instance, Ripley is one of them. And the other thing I have to be mindful of is I can't just look out for and put all the emphasis on where I live, right? And so, that would, if my area looked like it was all super pristine and glamorous and and other people had issues, then they're going to say, well, Alan only takes care of his own immediate surroundings, and that's not it. I deal with the same issues that all of you deal with, right? And so we have caught people back here before. We've had homeless people set up camps right behind my house, right? And, and I have a particular affinity for people who are in need and trying to help. And, and so, I had, most of you probably don't know, but some of people who have lived here in this community would know a person named Gene Bowers. He grew up here in the community. He and I went to elementary school, junior high, high school. He went into the military, came out with PTSD type issues, and ultimately died. He died right behind my house, literally under a tree right behind my house. And I've often wondered, is that every time I saw him, I'd give him a little money or, I'd buy him a tent, new shoes and clothes. He was a super nice guy, but he had issues. And a lot of the people that are homeless have issues. And unfortunately, they don't have places to take all their trash and all that. So sometimes they just dump it and, they're trying to survive. So we're dealing with a element in our society now, people that are hanging on by a thread. And so I'm mindful of that. It does not mean that our homeowners and residents should be tasked with dealing with the kinds of issues that we deal with, now where we got homelessness going through garbage cans and different things. But if people have been paying attention, I've been one of the leading voices on homelessness reform and really have come up with, I believe, the most innovative programs. And I'm happy to say that the city council voted in closed session a couple of weeks ago to adopt what I've been proposing, and it'll be coming to it'll be coming to Law and Ledge and into council sometime next month. And so we're going to see some drastic changes as it relates to homelessness and how we deal with it.
I'm sure I'm going to touch on that a little later with some more questions. So I'm very excited to do that, and I can't wait to dig into it.
Yeah.
One of my last couple like broad questions here about like history and stuff like that is you have been the representative for District 2 for some time now, for 8 years, two terms.
About 7 years and 10 months.
Yeah. And a
8
resident
months.
for much longer, right? In that capacity, what accomplishments over the entire, 7 years, both two terms so far, what accomplishments, just like top three, are you most proud of for how they've impacted District 2 residents? Just like top three things you've hung your hat on that you feel like are really the highlights of.
Yeah, well, I ran on, we need more grocery stores and fresh fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. So clearly we've made progress, but there's still a lot of work to go. When I took office, none of the big grocers wanted to even have the discussion. They didn't think our community was the type of community that they wanted to plant a flag in. So we were fighting that fight. So we got 3 of them and a 4th one to come. So I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments. The other thing is, things like transportation safety, issues where people had a lot of car accidents, including some, unfortunately, loss of lives. We've had, and probably people don't understand this, but we've had 2 new bridges built in District 2 directly as a result of my kind of driving. And these projects started 30 years ago. Okay. The latest one is on Real Linden, Maine. It's being completed now right at Bing's Market. And in fact, if you haven't gone to Bing's Market, people should check Bing's out too. Bing's is actually kind of like a little.
Is that a recent? I don't spend much time over, and I haven't been to Bing's Market yet, so I'll add that to my list of things I have.
You should, yeah. Bing's have been in the district for over 50 years, long time. It's family owned, same family owns it, and the bridge is being completed right now. So if you go down there, you'll see it. Okay,
cool.
It's a huge project. I think, those were a couple of the big ones. Let me just tell you another one, and one of the ones that I thought probably has had the biggest impact so far. Light rail's coming again. 1 second.
Light rail's coming. Oh. I thought that was your third one. I'm like, wait, what?
Well, in addition to, a lot of people don't know that I advocated and pushed to reopen the police station at South Avenue and Marysville. I was on what they used to call the Target Area Redevelopment Committee, some 30 years ago when we had advocated and approved funding, but it had opened and then it had shut down. And so I think it was during my second term, we put together the resources to reopen it, and it's reopened now. But let me tell you the biggest thing that I think has had the biggest impact in our community. And this community is rich in sports. It always has been. We've had some of the best football, baseball players in the entire country come out of this this community. And I grew up in a community where sports was a function of our lives. It kept a lot of us, out of trouble growing up. And so we didn't do drugs and the other things. We played sports. So when I was elected, the Little League program for Grant, which had gone to the Little League World Series and had won before. A lot of people don't know that history. And that's like an accomplishment that should be elevated, and everybody should know these monumental things that have come out of our community. But anyway, Little League had been defunct for over 10 years. So I reestablished it. Now we have over 700, not kids, families participating in our Little League football. We started with baseball, then we went into football, and then we started the basketball program. Those kids are coming up now because we started that during my first year in office. It was something I knew we could get going right away, and we did it. We got a kid at Grant High School right now that's one of the top basketball players in the country. A lot of people don't even know it. He's one of the top in the country, being recruited and has scholarship offers all over. A lot of people do know about our football program. We have 4 or 5 kids in the NFL right now. Kids coming out every year getting scholarships.
Wow.
You know, and we got a kid that was in the NBA last year, basketball player. And so sports is a huge thing in this community, always has been. And so that is one of the things that I think I understood would have one of the biggest immediate impacts, because it keeps kids, gives them something to do that's constructive, helps them hone their skills. And some of these kids do not have, in fact, a lot of these kids don't have the financial resources to go to school. Sports will be their ticket to a better life, as it was for me. You know, and I wasn't a straight A student. I wasn't even a straight B student. I didn't have the kind of grades that Kathy's kids have, where they can go to schools all over the country, you know. But
are pretty amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing, you know. And so, but what sports did for me is it taught me something. And as I got older, I could look back and understood the role. And as a young person, you don't have the maturity to make good decisions all the time. But sports kept us in a lane and away from some certain elements in the community that would have been very destructive. And so it allowed me to go to college to play baseball. In fact, I played basketball and football my freshman year. Didn't play baseball. And then ultimately I played baseball. But it allowed me to mature in a safe place, in a fertile environment. And then ultimately I could make better decisions as I got older. And that has led to, you know, a 30 some odd year in real estate development.
Yeah.
And a variety of things that I'm involved in that most people have no idea here.
Awesome. Great answer. Kind of, you know, the classic interview question after your greatest strengths. What do you feel like have been your, you know, greatest areas for improvement for leading the district? How do you feel like you know, didn't quite measure up to what you wanted? And then, you know, how do you see yourself not making those mistakes again, or what were those learning opportunities like?
Yeah, well, here, so for me, as I had mentioned earlier, you know, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So if there are things that are not done now in their priorities, they're still being worked on. But probably one of the biggest areas where I had hoped as a community, and with me, you know, being, you know, kind of non-political and easy to talk to, and you know, I'm a good listener. My sisters made sure, you know, I became a good listener. Is that our groups, you know, our communities really don't work well together, you know, and we don't have a cohesive community. We have a few strong voices in each community. Some communities work better together than others, but we have not really understood that once we learn how to unite and work together, learn how to vote, learn how to communicate with City Hall, you know, learn how to set community priorities as a community and as a district, how we can benefit one another, I think, a lot better. And so for me, you know, I didn't realize, you know, I mean, there are people here who, you know, for whatever reason, you know, the relationship just has not developed, you know. And I'm not a relationship chaser. You know, I'm an issue and you know, problem solver. I work on problems, and problems, you know, never stop. And so somebody always has an issue. And so I'm moving around to where I can impact it. And so, you know, if you know, people decide they don't want to work with me, or, you know, for whatever reason, I'm not giving them enough. I mean, there are people in this community I've given, you wouldn't believe what I've given to them in terms of financial resources, my own resources, access to my property. And because you can't continue to do what they want you to do, then they turn, you know, but that's selfishness. And I'm not a selfish person, you know, so I just move on, man. I let people, they can spin in a circle if they want. If they want to be constructive, then, you know, that's what I'm about. So
I definitely understand that there are relationships that have challenges and stresses, and you know, that in every department, right? Not just in politics. But I'd like to challenge you a little bit on, do you feel like it is your responsibility as a city council representative to be that unifying force between the communities? Do you think that that's something that you should be like leading the charge on? Do you support that?
Yeah, I do. I support it. I think yes, in some ways, but I think it's also really about issues. And so to the extent that community members, so for instance, Zach, you might have an issue and it competes with one of the other communities, right? And so, I have to try to evaluate and deal with the issues. Sometimes it's life safety issues. Sometimes it's food insecurity issues. Sometimes there are kids who can't go to college and I got to try to help them, help their families find the resources. Those are the kind of things you don't necessarily get to measure. And oftentimes, because of the nature of what we do, I can't come to you and say, Zach, go tell people that I helped your daughter, through her second semester of school, or I helped get your family groceries to eat. People don't want other people to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the issues are the issues, and I am an issue-oriented, trying to find the best solution possible. And I'm also working in a bureaucracy where it takes 5 votes, to move the needle. So, I think in that regard, I've had some successes, and sometimes it's not immediate. Like this whole homelessness issue, I've been a loud voice on that for a long time. We're just now moving because they wanted to try this and that and the other. And eventually they say, I was really pleased the other day when the mayor said, Alan is right. We should have did this. We're going to do this. We got to try it,
I think that's a great segue into like what is such a big issue in our community, right? And I'd love to hear more about, that specific thing that you've brought up. But homelessness obviously is affecting District 2, I think, probably a little disproportionately to other districts, or at least like, Marysville Boulevard, like, these are things that affect you in your home. Like, it's a constant battle for us. So I know recent progress. So I'd love to know what specifically do you think needs to take place to address the vast and varying needs of homelessness and mental health within this community?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest issues of the day. And believe it or not, District 2 is not the most impacted district. It's we have a high degree of impact, though, make no mistake about it, but it's not the biggest. However, this is a statewide issue. It is, atrocious in a lot of places throughout our entire state. However, the thing that I think will have one of the biggest impacts is we have to put people in a safe environment and do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I've advocated for a safe ground, multiple safe grounds in appropriate places. And a lot of people don't know that we actually have anti-camping ordinances and ordinances that would keep people out of our neighborhoods and off sidewalks and business corridors, kind of doing some of the stuff we see them doing. However, the court has said that if you do not have a place for them to go, then you can't enforce your ordinance.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is take the burden away from our communities and our neighborhoods and our businesses from having to deal with that being, turnoffs to people coming and investing in certain places, having people concerned about their safety in their communities because they don't know, what mental issues or other issues some of these people have. And we find multiple locations throughout the city in appropriate areas where we have safe grounds. And then we set up porta potties, we set up showers, we set up provisions for them to be medically triaged. A lot of people don't know that, and some do if they're, for instance, on medication. Certain medications you have to keep at a certain temperature. But if you're homeless, how can you do that?
Yeah.
And so when you see people that are imbalanced, that are acting funny, or, they might look like they're drunk or they're high on some drugs, they could just be, their medication is not functioning because it's not. And so we need a place for people to stabilize. And then we triage them in that location, and then we help them find shelter. So a safe ground could be a community with tiny houses like we're doing in District 2. We have one of the first ones in District 2 happening now. It's at St. Paul's Church over on Eleanor.
Compassion Village, right?
Yeah, and it is a tiny home community. It is right now. It is receiving rave reviews, and there have been no issues that I'm aware of that people have reported. In fact, people came out in support when we held the community meeting at the church. And so, tiny homes or what's that?
I was there.
Were you there? That's right. That's right. You told me you were a Bernie guy, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought we had that in common, but I see it didn't make a difference, though. So,
I mean, it made a difference to me, you know.
Yeah. All right. That's all right. So, you know, and you know what? I didn't put that with you. Actually, I knew your face was recognizable.
Yep.
And we had a chance to talk, but I should have knew when you gave me that evil eye look that was you who was saying all that stuff. So that's all right.
So I'd love to ask you a question about Compassion Village, and I'm hearing one side of a story.
But that's not. But that's not actually what my overall strategy is. That's a part of it.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead and ask your question.
So I guess too, if you can. What you were just alluding to about the safe spaces and, you know, kind of everywhere, and like this ability to triage and have services available, is that solution what is now underway from the mayor? Is that what you were talking about earlier, or something that they've actually begun to enact?
No, the safe ground approach is underway.
Okay, cool. That's exciting.
Yeah, it impacts more people. And it allows us to direct people to a location where they can sleep, where they can receive medical attention, where they can take a shower, where they can store some of their stuff if they got pets, you know, and it takes the burden off of you and Kathy and others from having people, you know, sleeping in and around where you live, or people, you know, going through your trash cans and that kind of things. It gives people a better option.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to take work too, but it takes a substantial amount of the burden off of the everyday citizen, you know, and that's what I think is unfortunate, because for years, the mayor and others have said, listen, we want to get everybody indoors and we're not going to do anything until we get them. Well, when is that going to happen?
Yeah.
Hasn't made much progress in the last 2 years.
You know, we're going backwards, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming the mayor, because it's admirable, and I want everybody to be indoors too, but it's not going to happen.
I had a friend who worked for STEPS and for a couple other city organizations regarding homelessness, and his response was, I asked him, is it tiny homes? Is it the Tough Shed project? Is it, you know, more shelters? Is it triaging? Is it bringing water to them when it's 110 degrees outside? And he said, it's all of those things. None of those things is one solution. All
Absolutely.
of them have to do all of those things to make an impact. So I totally
Just tell everybody I'm right, Zach. Just say Alan was right.
Alan Warren, for sure. I'm excited.
I mean, all I can do, so just so you know, I'm patient. And again, this to me is not a bounce to try to bounce around in political offices, right? If there was somebody who I thought was committed and prepared, I wouldn't have run this last term. You know, it wasn't like, I mean, this is, man, I got a full life, you know, and a part of my full life, though, is giving and helping. And so, which made it easy for me to transition into another role where I can give and help, right? So I really don't care about the politics. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And, you know, and people can say what they want, you know, but until you get close enough to it and see how to make a difference doing it this way, that you can't have an appreciation for it. And anybody can say, oh, when I get in, I'm going to do this. And You look at their track record, man. I mean, you can look at where somebody has come from and tell, I mean, I could say things that I won't because I don't think it's appropriate. But, I mean, this is real life, man. This is not hocus pocus. This is, roll up your sleeves, get to work, and just,
Yeah.
the political winds are going to blow. You're going to be pulled on by all the special interests. You're going to try to make promises that you can't keep. And, I just say, listen, I'm very candid with people. I'm candid with all the special interests. I'm candid with you, and I'm going to do what I can do. And the chips fall where they fall. That's the way it goes.
So to trying to jump around on topics here a little bit, but I appreciate the answers about the homelessness.
How did I do?
I think you did well. I'm excited.
Smile. Say it. Say Alan did great. Say Alan, he did great.
So we have a hot topic of District 2 is always marijuana, right? Everybody has they need to register about it. So
how do you feel about it?
I think it's a great thing to have as long as it's well regulated and it has community, right? It has local on board,
and it's legal.
And it's legal. So do you think that the marijuana industry has a larger presence in District 2 compared to other City of Sacramento districts?
Absolutely not.
And do you believe we should have a cap on either cultivation or retail sale?
Yeah, I believe if we were saturated, we should have a cap. But just keep in mind this. All the talk about Alan, and I mean, I hear some of the chatter and it's nonsense. So there's not been one dispensary approved since I've been in office. Not one. Okay. All the dispensaries we have were approved during Sandy Sheedy's time. So just know that. Okay. Now, I'm not against dispensaries. I'm not. But people running around making all this noise, people have their own interests that they're trying to promote. That's what that's all about. So here's what I've said.
That's the perception. So that's a great point of view to bring up.
Yeah, let me just tell you what what I've advocated for. First of all, I voted against the marijuana ordinance, okay? I'm one of the no votes, me and Angelique, okay? And the reason—
Thank you.
Yeah, and the reason I voted against it because I didn't think the regulations were strong enough, and I didn't think the fair share of tax revenues were going back to the communities that needed the money the most. Okay.
Yeah, we came to you and you really listened to us on that too.
Well, tell them, Kathy. Tell them Alan stood
yeah.
up for us, And so here's the other thing is this. I've said no cultivating on our business corridors, because if you do that, you have to board all the doors and the windows. You can't even see in them; they're locked. And we don't want our prime retail corridors, boarded and vacant permanently. It didn't make any sense. So some people didn't like that, right? Some people didn't like that, and I said cultivation should be, in my opinion, in industrial parks. And so what I have supported are cultivators who follow the rules and the direction. So, and I think there's been, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 cultivators that have opened since I've been in office, 4 or 5. Okay. Now there were some that were illegal, and there's still some that are illegal.
4 or 5 in District 2 or 4 or 5 total?
Citywide.
Okay.
No, 4 or 5 in District 2.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
because what happens is each district, you have the ability to call up if it's in your district, if somebody's trying to do something. Like, for instance, some cultivators have tried to put them on Marysville Boulevard, Del Paso, and I've called them up, right? And then we put in an ordinance so that you can't. So now people they can't open a cultivation on Marysville, Del Paso Boulevard or Arden. Can't do it. Now retail you can, but there have not been any new retail licenses even granted since I've been in office. So to suggest somehow I'm somebody even went as far as to say, I'm getting paid money from marijuana cultivators and all that. The Sacramento Bee ran an article. If you look at, out of all of the council people, I've gotten the least money from marijuana people, right?
Yep.
Furthermore, I don't take gifts, period. I take 0 gifts. So you can't buy me dinner or a drink or give me a gift. I don't take it. And I don't allow my staff members to do it. I'm the only one on the council that way. You know, but I don't run around saying, you know, I mean, a lot of these things are not to make anybody look bad or good. It's really a reflection of what I think the responsibility for our office should be. We have so many issues. I don't want any of that to be distracting to us or my staff members.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
And so I'm open. My position is I'm open to retailers for marijuana. I would probably support 1 or 2 in the event that the operators follow all the rules, and the city, we just agreed that we're gonna issue citywide 10 new retail licenses. They're not district specific, so somebody has to apply and receive it and then go through the process, right? And then there'll be a series of checks and balances. But it's
Retail being dispensaries?
Yeah, retail dispensaries that are legal.
Okay.
Yeah, so the city is allowing them in retail corridors and shopping centers citywide, okay? And so there's going to be 10 new licenses granted sometime in the next couple of months.
Interesting.
But no, I'm not the marijuana king in the, you know, in District 2, not the marijuana haven for people. That, you know, that's all make believe.
If you were that Ridley property, would have a giant warehouse on it, I'm sure.
No, I wouldn't. Not only that, I don't even allow, believe me, I've had people come to me and say, can we rent your building? Can we buy? I won't even rent my building to marijuana business. Not because, you know, any other reason that I'm in office, and that should not be, people should not try to gain favor with me by then renting my building and paying me a lot of money for it, right? I got a couple of buildings sitting empty that I can rent for a lot of money right now, but I don't. And
So,
that's part of the commitment that I've made to be in office.
Yeah. I'd love to expand on that a little bit, of the commitment you made in office and everything. One thing that I really, one of your opponent's like flagship, you know, guarantees is that he, if elected, will step down from managing his companies, his grocery stores, and appoint employees so that he can give 100% of you know, the operational responsibility to them, and accept 100% responsibility. And I'm sure, you know, there's always going to be there's always going to be oversight if you're CEO of a new company. I understand you're the CEO of New Facebook.
All you got to do is check a person's past to see whether they're a liar or not. But if they're telling the truth or they're a liar.
I'm just
We're
curious.
going to ask you about you.
If you've ever considered making any kind of promise like that, and if not, why not?
Well, if those would have paid attention, I did do that. I did that when I first ran. You know, I put a new president in place and somebody to run the day-to-day business. I did that in the very beginning, okay? And it was announced in the newspaper. I mean, you know, typically when I do stuff, it's not just a little bit of noise. It makes enough noise, it gets attention. So that was done in 2011, okay? So more power to him if that's what he's saying. But let me just tell you this. Everybody on the council has another job. Everybody. It's a part-time position. That's the way it's labeled. And even the mayor does other stuff. You know, now the mayor's job is full-time, but we're in part-time. So, you know, let me just tell you, this job is 24/7, period. You know, I mean, here it is now. It's what, 7 o'clock at night. I start at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, right? My phones don't get cut off. I have people showing up at my house, right? Because they know where I live. They don't know where the other person lives. They don't even know them. You know what I mean? Try to call them, and that. I mean, it's a ridiculous assertion, but I mean, people will say whatever they think they need to say to get in, but I can just tell you it's going to blow up, and probably even before the election, all this stuff will blow up. It's, it's.
Okay. Well, another thing I want to ask you about related to your company is that I've noticed, and I respect the fact that you recuse yourself, when there's any possible chance of, conflict of interest, right? I definitely respect that. The point someone raised with me is that with affordable housing and land use and all of those things being such needed topics of conversation, especially for District 2, when our city council representative participates in the discussions but isn't able to vote because he recuses himself.
I can vote on every one of those issues. You only have to recuse yourself if it directly impacts you within a certain radius. So there's no preclusion from me recusing myself. And I've led some of those issues, so, and the council respects my expertise in that area. So it's not an issue. I mean, we got 1,000 houses, 1,000 units being built right now in District 2, half of which are affordable and half are market rate.
Is that by the mall?
All over. That's part of one, My company is built, I built all those new houses across from, on El Camino, across the street from the Wiener Schnitzel right there.
Okay.
My company built all of those. Most of the new housing you see in this community, I built overwhelming majority of them. So, and there's no issue with recusal. You only, if you're within a 300-foot radius, sometimes a 500-foot radius, you recuse yourself. But let me just tell you, so most of what I own now is in District 2 would be on Del Paso Boulevard. I own 2 other parcels. One is over near Wood Lake on Evergreen, and I'm allowing a nonprofit organization to put a community farm on it so they can grow fruits and vegetables, and then,
is that the group that's associated with the Oak Park Art Garden by any chance?
Could be. Rob Gayon is one of the people, and then Annie lives over in Wood Lake. She's the other person that they're leading the effort, and so, I'm just letting them have the property for free. You know what I mean? And so, and then I own another piece of property kind of back off of Norwood. It's about 3 acres, and it's where I had, actually this got national news. It was in like I think the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or something, where I was advocating for safe ground back when I first got on council, and I was going to allow my parcel to be the first test site. So a lot of people were interested in that, and we got a lot of calls about it. And those are the only other parcels that I own that have development potential.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Cool. I want to turn to politics. We got about 20 minutes of our allotted time left. What I personally watched and called into the Strong Mayor meeting. I know that was a very long meeting, and I'm sure that it might be a little fuzzy with how,
I was there too.
5 hours, 6. They turned Steinberg's reaction when they asked how many callers there were. They said like 78 or something. He's just like, great. That was so awesome. So I watched that, and I was a little bit confused. So I'm honestly just asking for clarification on something.
Sure.
You voiced your position on Strong Mayor like very clearly, and I definitely appreciated it. But it seemed like after you voiced your opposition to it. It seemed like then you voted yes to allow it to be on the ballot. So maybe I misunderstood how that played out, but
No, I didn't.
Your response to Strong Mayor.
I was a no all the way. So I didn't vote for it to go on the ballot.
Gotcha. What is your reason to oppose it?
Well, first of all, I just think, during this kind of crisis moment, we don't have, adequate community participation. People couldn't ask questions. We couldn't essentially hold the mayor accountable to, the commitments, and then the commitments wouldn't line up with the language in the actual ordinance, right? And so even if it's subject to interpretation, I mean, I thought something like that needed to be very clear. We needed to have adequate community participation, and to have it announced one week and vote on it the next week, I just thought was inappropriate, particularly during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Particularly connected with the equity issues.
And the equity issue, I thought was disingenuous. I thought,
Yeah.
that clearly is very popular. That's kind of the issue of the day. Everybody, that's what people are marching and rallying and picketing and all this other stuff about. And I thought if the community decides they want strong mayor, that's fine. And I don't necessarily have a problem with people having the opportunity to vote on it. But I think you got to have community engagement, and the fact that this community has voted on it multiple times already, including just recently a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so I just couldn't bring myself to support it under those conditions to even put it on the ballot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to me, it feels disingenuous to put those two issues together. And what I'm afraid of is that the ballot measure as a whole fails and we lose the opportunity to bring in, those equity pieces that are so important and would pass unanimously,
Absolutely. Well, the equity pieces can happen right now. There's nothing stopping it,
Right.
except for the council. We should be moving the equity pieces right now. We don't need anything else.
Why aren't we?
And so, because it's not the political will of the council, man. You got to have 5 votes to, So just so you know, the mayor and the city manager set the agenda. We can make recommendations, but those two are statutorily have the authority to set the agenda, right? So a lot of people don't know that, right?
Yeah.
So if they don't want to put something on the agenda, then they don't put it. I mean, we can ask, and typically when we ask, they do, but certain items they don't.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's a fight, man. Politics is a fight. It's a dog, cat scratching and barking, and it is a lot of stuff that people don't see. But let me just say this too: the mayor is a good person. He has a good heart. He's been in politics all his life, but he's a political biggie, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just likes his way. He likes it the way he likes it, and that doesn't mean we got to agree with it, but, I don't want people to equate my no vote with me saying that he's, incapable, or he's not a good person, or he's going to do that's not what I believe.
Yeah.
Ellen, I think we need for you to host some how things work, how the community gets involved, how we have a cohesive thing happening between the neighborhoods. We need ups with you to help.
I'm happy to do it, and assuming that this election turns out the way I think it's going to turn out, then that'll be one of the first things we do. Okay.
It would be awesome to have. I signed up for the How the City Works course, thing, and it was canceled because of everything that's going on. And I'm also in the FBI Citizens Academy, which they just rescheduled virtually. So
I'm a graduate of that academy.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm super excited. My mom graduated from it and recommended me, so I'm very excited.
What's your mom's name?
Jenny Davidson. She's the CEO of Stand Up Placer, the domestic violence center for all of Placer County.
Oh, okay, yeah, I graduated from that program in 2011, 2012, something like that.
She was a couple years ago, I think. She's a pretty recent grad, but anyway, they're doing it virtually, and I would love to see the city take on the same kind of thing, because I think especially right now, there's so many people who are really fired up to understand how the system works so that they can be a better part of it. And if the city did a virtual, way, format, be able to really incorporate a lot of people.
I mean, that's a great idea. That's something we can work on.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into one of your questions about city council. So one of our residents asked, what do you think that city council can do better to represent the voices of the diverse communities throughout Sacramento? How do you think they're not succeeding in that now, and how can they be better at it?
Well, That's an excellent question, because our city is extremely diverse. There are a lot of needs, and there are, consistently some of the same groups of people at the back of the line. And so by the time they get to the front, there's nothing left. And so I've been actually pushing the city in that direction. And, I think what it takes is people across culture, across race, across religion, to have a unified voice and priorities that are reflective of their feelings. The questioners who just asked the question, you all and others recognizing and then expressing to us that very thing. And then understanding that we're only as strong as our weakest link. As we can continue to strengthen, the people at the bottom, it takes pressure off of our general fund. It takes pressure off of our police department, off our fire department. It allows, if people are coming off of unemployment, going into employment, they now become contributors to the system, and they strengthen the system, but continually priorities have not been reflected that speak to the diversity of our city.
Yeah, I think we're only
consistent.
We're the sum of our parts, right? And we need
absolutely. And some people think, well, if they get it, then I don't get it, right? But I mean, it doesn't. We're more connected than that, and we're closely connected. And I think people should hopefully understand that, the more we help people, the more people succeed, the stronger our community is, the healthier our community is, the more we can get done, the safer our community is.
Right. It's abundance thinking and mindset shifting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If we know where we're going and what we're doing, then, and how much we've grown or where the needs are.
Yeah. But I think, and really having people being honest and have true discussions about sensitive and tough issues.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't do that.
Right.
Speaking of sensitive and tough issues, policing.
Yes.
Great question from a resident on a tough topic, right? That I don't think there's any clear answer for. As inequities in policing practices and training continue to be exposed, how have you already attempted to bridge the gap of mistrust that currently exists within our community and local officers? What ideas do you have around training, funding, policies that you think would, bridge that gap and make that happen?
Sure. So Zach, again, and I just say this because it's public record and there's recent writings in the newspaper and others, I've been one of the leading advocates for changes in law enforcement and how we do it now in Sacramento in the 21st century to make it safer, not just for our community, but also for police officers. Mm-hmm. So I put
some examples. It sounds like, sorry.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they're posted on my city website. They've been posted for a while. The media, the B has written about them. I've recently issued 3 proposals to change some of how policing is done in Sacramento. The first one is that every police officer should have business cards with their name, phone number, or name, badge number, and then a phone number where residents or citizens or people who get stopped by the police, first thing the police officer does is introduce themselves, give them the card, and that way the initial interaction is not a super threatening interaction, and the officer knows that they have to give this card to the people that they stop, be it jaywalking, speeding ticket, they see people arguing, whatever. I mean, unless somebody is fighting, they got to break up a fight or something like that, right? But they still need to leave their card. And then that way people can report to the Office of Public Safety which is housed in the city of Sacramento. In real time, people can report their experiences with law enforcement. They can report bad encounters, and they can report good encounters with police officers. And it's a conversation piece, you know, and it's a way for people in our community to know who is policing us, right? So we know, just like you know who your District 2 council officer is, you should know who your police officers are too. I think it's that important. Second thing I propose is that we have a website, city website, that by district, every police officer, unless they're working undercover, is identified. There's a picture, name, and a bio, a short bio on the police officer. You know who they are, if they went to college, where they're from, any of that history, right? And I think the more we know who's policing us, and the police officers know that as well, I think that's also a bridge for a better relationship. You know, we have some sense of who's doing what, and we can identify people more correctly. The third thing that I've proposed is more controversial. I proposed a automatic suspension to police officers that shoot people that don't have weapons. Okay, and it's really intended to stop, you know, people getting shot in the back, or people being shot and they don't have something that really poses some type of imminent threat to law enforcement. That one is obviously much more controversial, and so there would be an automatic suspension with pay to law enforcement.
You cut out there, an automatic suspension
without pay.
Okay.
Without pay. You know, and obviously, you know, some of the advocates for defunding police and changes really like it. Police don't like it as much. So what they are saying, and recently I had a conversation with the city manager and representative from the police department, and what they're saying, that's part of collective bargaining. It's actually part of a law that, you know, we have in the state, you know, whereby you can't suspend without due process, and, you know, there's a whole process. But my thought was that I'd like to see law enforcement light rail again.
Law enforcement.
I'd like to see light rail come to the table and negotiate some of these changes that help make policing safer, you know, and really help to create more trust and transparency without necessarily having to go through collective bargaining or some type of state law change. You know, I'd like to see us be more progressive, you know, and reasonable as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't see a lot of justification. I don't really see much justification at all for somebody to be shot if they don't have a weapon.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
and right now the law is, if a police officer feels like, you know, they're in imminent danger, they can shoot. Right? And to me, that gives too much leeway in discretion to whom you shoot and how you shoot them, and which is what we're seeing throughout the country. And it's not just that, it's also aggressive behavior for menial offenses, like a knee to the neck, you know, that killed somebody, or young man in our community was not even jaywalking, just walking across the street, and the police, you know, they had an altercation. See, all of these issues, what all of you may or may not know, all of these issues cost you money. It is one of the reasons why taxes go up, why your water bills go up, why your garbage service goes up, because millions of dollars get paid out when these incidences happen. Sometimes you don't even know that if there was any repercussions to the law enforcement officers, and most of the times you don't. Even me as a council person, I don't know if there have been some type of, you know, discipline,
of course, yeah,
administered to law enforcement. But I do know that millions and millions and millions of dollars are paid out. And those are funds that you guys and myself, we pay taxes to the city, and those are funds that can be used for something else. And so, I mean, it comes with a cost. It's the physical cost. It is the emotional and mental burden and cost in our community. It's the divisiveness that it creates in our communities. And it's also the financial cost.
Yep.
And that oftentimes does not get talked about. But literally, we pay out millions of dollars. And I mean, the numbers sometimes are just, horrendous that we have to pay out in some of these cases.
Yeah, definitely. I think I commend you for passing that, regardless of how controversial it is. I know about the sign I made and put in Curtis Park that you helped me ensure would stay there. Talking about lives lost, unarmed people's lives.
So I'm surprised you've been so hard on me, Zach. All the times I've helped you and been
I'm
nice
surprised
to you.
you think I'm hard on you.
He's hard on everyone.
I'm joking, you guys. It comes with the territory. I mean, people should expect a lot of us, as elected officials. And, I mean, regardless of how well we do or whatever, it's never enough. I mean, there's always so much more we can do.
And it's so easy to just point at you, right? Rather than pointing at departments. And no, just kidding.
Yeah, no.
All right.
No,
So
yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time. I know we said 6 to 7:30, and I'm sure, we all want to get back to our normal evening. But
my wife she just ate dinner. She wants me to come eat.
All right. Let me throw one more.
Whatever, that's fine. Yeah.
Let me throw one more question at you before we finish up here. I attended a lot of the debates that were happening earlier in the year, and I know some other residents did too, and we really hope to see you there, and weren't able to. So I want to just find out.
You said a lot of the debates. There weren't a lot of debates.
I attended 4.
Yeah.
And I know they're not always communicated perfectly. I understand that. And I know that some of those relationships come into play there. I will totally acknowledge that. So I just want to ask you directly if you are interested in and will, commit to, if communicated well ahead of time and everything.
If schedule allows, I'm happy to do them, just like all the others, man. I've not turned down anything. You just got to understand that we have schedules, and a lot of these things are, very structured. I have speaking engagements as a representative, I have community commitments, and so if something, I've not turned down any, the one I participated in one, and, my candidate was there, and he ended up leaving. It was a packed house, I don't know, 300 or 400 people there or more. So Ramona stayed, and I was there, and he wasn't there. So but anyway, I'm happy to do it.
It sounds like since Hagginwood is doing such a great job having these things online, really we should just, hold some kind of debate.
If you think it would be helpful, I mean, listen, that people can organize it, and if like I said, if my schedule allows it, I'm happy to do it. Okay. Right. I don't run from nobody, nothing or nobody.
my last question for you, Mr. Warren.
No, that was your last question.
Is just what all these topics we've covered today, your experience as a city council representative, what makes you the best? Why should people be voting for you come November?
Well, I think it's a lifelong commitment. My commitment is not fleeting. It's not temporary. It's not recent. It's been a lifelong history, as a testament to the multiple people. I just saw, and I didn't even know it was being done, but about 20 people did videos, and they talked about a lot of stuff that I don't talk about, and I don't even know where it's at. I don't know if it's on my Facebook because I don't do social media either. Okay. So I don't follow people. People can hide behind social media. I don't do that. I like to talk to people when I do, but people tell me things. But recently I saw about, 20 people or so did these like 5-minute videos, and they talked about different things. And, you know, some of this stuff goes back, man, you know, forever. You know, this is not a, you know, like I said, it's not a sprint, man. This is who I am, and this is the life that I live. And so, you know, but hey, maybe there is somebody that can do it better right now, you know, and if so, then more power to them, you know.
Okay.
I want the best person. Believe me, if I thought the best person was a candidate, I wouldn't have run, because you know, like I said, you know, this community means something to me, right? My family's been here for 50 years, actually more than 50 years. So I'm not just moving into the community. I'm not just looking for an investment. I'm not, you know, this has been my life, man.
It's your home.
Yep.
Awesome.
So,
well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Warren. I very much appreciate it. And
It's been great to have you this evening.
yeah.
all right, you guys have a wonderful evening, and I'm happy to, you know, work on some of the things that we talked about. Okay.
Good. We'll be in touch.
All right, you guys, take care.
Thank you.
Take care, Alan.
Bye-bye.